Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Welcome on. Let's Taylor.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into Dodger Heads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Matt Moreno. Matt, a bit of breaking news about the Dodgers' highest paid player in 2022. That is pitcher Trevor Bauer, a guy who's been facing a myriad of accusations over the last few months. Of course, did not pitch for the Dodgers towards the end of 2021. Well, there was an update today, and this is what happened. The district attorney has decided not to press criminal charges against Bauer. This was a quote from the charge. Quote, after a thorough review of all the available evidence, including the civil restraining order proceedings, witness statement, and the physical evidence, the people are unable to prove the relevant charges beyond a reasonable doubt. MLB then had a statement of their own. Quote, MLB's investigation is ongoing. We will comment further at an appropriate time. And likewise, the Dodgers had a statement. MLB is continuing their investigation. We will have no further comment until it concludes. So sort of a big story. We weren't sure if charges were actually going to be made or not. They are not, Matt. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, this was sort of the first shoe to fall that MLB and the Dodgers have both been waiting on. And, the Pasadena Police Department turned over their findings to the LA District Attorney last August. And then, it was kind of months of silence. Some reporters would kind of check in with the DA and ask, hey, is there a timeline? Do you know when you might issue a ruling? And it was always, no, we don't, kind of when it's out, when we decide is when we'll decide. So now here we are. Like I said, it is kind of one piece to the puzzle. There's still uncertainty with, Rob Manfred still has the power, the authority to levy a suspension against Bauer under kind of the joint domestic violence policy that's in place. And, the Dodgers have been sort of reluctant to take any sort of action or make any sort of statement outside of, it's an ongoing investigation. Once MLB concludes and issues their findings, then we'll comment on it. So there's still a lot of unknown. Like as much as there is one step forward in the situation, still plenty of uncertainty.
Totally, and it's a tricky situation, obviously, because what we're talking about is a very sensitive thing. Obviously, in the media age that we live in, there are pictures, there are accusations that have been made publicly. And depending on your level of trust in the criminal justice system and whether or not something like this, does this mean he's innocent? Does this just simply mean that he's not innocent, but there isn't enough to prove that he's guilty? And how you parse that out. You and I are not here to try and navigate all of those landmines today. I think what's interesting, as you said, is kind of what happens next with Trevor Bauer. MLB is the most important one. Like if you're a Dodger fan, this was a significant piece of information, but the only real piece of information that matters is the MLB's decision here. And yes, whether he was charged might make a difference, but if MLB decides to suspend him for the entirety of the next season, which they can still, by the way, do, regardless of if criminal charges are filed, right? If their investigation reveals that there's enough there for them to suspend him, they can do that. If they suspend him for the full season, that money comes off of the Dodgers' salary tax books. Yes, they still have to pay him, but the luxury tax, that money is no longer a part of that equation, and all of a sudden some free money just came up. On the flip side, if this becomes a 20-game suspension, which, we've seen MLB hand out very small suspensions for seemingly very big crimes in the past, that's the biggest shoe to drop, is the MLB piece of this, and the Dodgers are right to say, hey, we're just going to see and play this thing out. My question to you, Matt, is what does this mean for the Dodgers? Like, as far as I think we would all be foolish to be sitting here and saying that this has no impact on Trevor Bauer's future with the Dodgers. You and I and Daniel, we've all been on record saying, you know what, I shouldn't speak for you. I think Daniel and I'm not sure entirely where you're at. Daniel and I for sure have been saying we don't think he ever pitches for the Dodgers again. It would be foolish to say that the odds of him pitching for the Dodgers have not gone up. Now, have they gone up 1%? Have they gone up 10%? Have they gone up 50%? I don't know. But where do you see that piece of this going?
Yeah, so last year I was firmly in the camp of, Bauer had thrown his last pitch for the Dodgers. There was no way they would welcome him back to the team. I think there would be clubhouse issues with it. I think some players maybe would lend their support, in Bauer in his video that, he deemed, quote unquote, the truth, thanked, he didn't name anybody, but he thanked teammates and coaches and other players for what he called standing by him through all of this. But I don't think everybody would welcome back with open arms. And so Andrew Friedman, as much as him and his front office has very much, the perception is it's very analytically driven and, a bunch of computer nerds and this and that. He does value clubhouse culture and, kind of the atmosphere in there. So that's one wrinkle. The other side to it is I think there would be pretty significant fan backlash if Bauer does return. And, do the Dodgers want to navigate that sort of PR headache? It's already been, pretty apparent on social media. I'm sure they're aware of that. All of that being said, I do believe that the likelihood of Bauer pitching for the team has only continued to increase as time has gone on. And I think criminal charges not being filed is one step towards him getting back on the mound for them. And, like you said, MLB can obviously still do their suspension, but whatever they kind of decide, potentially, Bauer will get credit, I'm assuming, for the games missed last year. It was basically half a season.
Yeah.
So now you're looking at, yes, if they suspend him for in theory, a full year, if he gets credit for basically a half season last year, then now he's potentially back by after the All-Star break this year. I think that's something the Dodgers will weigh. I think obviously I don't want to speak for them. I think it would have been easier for them had MLB said, you know what, if MLB says we're suspending you 2 years, and then that kind of becomes its own separate fight. I think whatever the punishment is, it's probably safe to say Bauer will appeal it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it could go any which way, and frankly, nothing would surprise me at this point. Whereas if you had asked me this question last year and we did discuss it, I would have said, no, there's no way he's back. But now, I don't think you can firmly say that.
Yeah, I think the piece about fans, I mean, I'm seeing the same stuff on social media that you are. And look, social media is not the reality necessarily, but there are people that are very frustrated by this. Now, you could make the argument those people were frustrated when Trevor Bauer signed with the Dodgers. Like, the Dodgers walked into this mess knowing what the backlash was going to be. And so who's to say they don't walk straight back into it and say, we're paying the guy. He's not guilty. No charges were filed. We're just playing forward. The flip side is, I think they walked into the minefield once. It exploded on them. The bombs all went off. And now it's like, are you really going to walk back in? Like you've already seen the bombs go off. It's not like you're already pot committed here. You've got another fresh slate to make a new decision about how you're going to handle it. And honestly, if you feel like some goodwill has been lost, you could make up some of that goodwill by saying, yeah, you know what? We made a mistake signing him. We know he's not being charged with anything, but we're still going to say, you're not coming to pitch here. You're going to get your $40 million. There's nothing we can do about that. So be it. In my mind, I would just like to say, I am so glad I'm not the person that has to make that decision. Because he's going to get paid. If he gets suspended again, that's different. But he's going to get paid. Whether it counts toward the luxury tax or not is the question. So I would not like to be Andrew Friedman, who has to go to Mark Walter and say, hey, Mark, that $40 million check to Trevor Bauer, we know it's great. We know he hasn't been charged with anything. And we know he was suspended for 40 games and he's already served those. We don't think he should pitch for us this year. And explain to the owner that the $40 million check he's about to write is just going to go straight down the tubes. Yeah. In a situation, by the way, in which your team desperately needs starting pitching, and the guy who's available, regardless of what you think of him as a person, is an effective starting pitcher. I'm not saying he's the best pitcher. I'm not saying he's one of the top 10. He would be the third best pitcher on the Dodgers right now. It's actually not a question about that. At the least, a third best pitcher. And so that is speaking of minefields to walk into, it's a difficult one. That's why Andrew Friedman has the power he does. That's why he gets paid the big bucks. He's got to make those types of decisions. But for me, it's just a tricky situation. I think the fact that the Dodgers desperately need pitching, I think the fact that they've already walked into this minefield once with him, I think all these factors, now no charges being filed, then the MLB suspension to come soon, all those things just make this complicated. So let me ask you simply, if you had to guess, and if you want to put numbers on it, you could put numbers on it, but today, pre-MLB suspension, pre any of that, just knowing that charges are not being filed, do you think he pitches for the Dodgers in 2000? I think all of us agree he will not pitch in 2023 or beyond for the Dodgers. He would opt out of that third year almost assuredly, or he's out of baseball. But do you think in 2022 Trevor Bauer pitches for the Dodgers?
I'm still, you bring up, before I fully answer that, you do bring up an interesting point with, the Dodgers do need pitching in. And so I'd be curious to see if Clayton Kershaw isn't re-signed, if they don't sign any other pitcher, if they don't trade for any other pitcher, does that influence them one way or the other with respect to Bauer? So I don't think you can rule that out either, like you just said. To answer your question, I'll still say I don't think he pitches for the team this year. I think he is done with them.
I agree. I think it's 85% chance he does not pitch for the Dodgers. I think there's a 15% chance he does. I would hope I think you're right on. I mean, I think if you're an organization of principles, you would say we're making our decision regardless of what our roster looks like on opening day. Whether that's what the Dodgers end up doing or not, I'm not sure. There's probably not trade value. I mean, I think, is there a team out there that if the Dodgers said, we'll pay 35 of the $40 million that he's owed to get him out of here, $30 million of the $40 million he's owed, like, is there a team out there that would say yes to that? Maybe the Houston Astros. I mean, the morality seems to be a little loose down there in Houston. Who knows? I mean, because I think the odds of him playing in Major League Baseball again have gone up way, way higher. Like, no charges. I think it's a greater than 50% chance he pitches in Major League Baseball again. There have guys that have done terrible things that were charged that ended up coming back. The fact that he was not charged, I think, helps his case. But I'm with you. I'm still leaning no. I think it's about 85% no, 15% yes. And that comes up from about 95 to 5, I would say, prior to today. So I'd love to hear from folks below. What do you think? Odds that Trevor Bauer pitches for the Dodgers in 2022. Odds that he pitches in a Major League Baseball game at some point in the future here moving forward. What do you think? Let us know below. And as fans, like, I mean, give us a sense. Where are you at? Like, I've seen people like, I'm out on the Dodgers if he pitches for them again. I've seen lots of people, of course, these people will be active in our comments, which are, he's innocent, good for him, blah, blah, blah. So let us know what you think below. Keep it civil, of course. Remember, this is a delicate issue. That's Matt Moreno. My name is Jeff Spiegel. We appreciate you joining us. This is DodgerHeads presented by DodgerBlue.com. DodgerBlue.com has all the latest, so once we get information about MLB's decision, the Dodgers' decision, DodgerBlue.com will be the place to go. Of course, click subscribe, ring the notification bell here as well. See you next time.